I sat in a grease-stained booth at a 24-hour diner, watching my own funeral live stream on the corner television. On screen. My son wiped a tear from his cheek and preached about the tragic accident that took his mother. He thinks I am ash in an urn. He does not know I am finishing my hamburger, gripping a DNA test that proves he faked my death. It is time to crash the party. My name is Eleanor Marlowe. Though for 30 years everyone just called me Ellie. I am 58 years old. A white woman with hair that has recently turned the colour of dirty snow, and until last week. I was the chief accountant for the Harborline Hope Foundation right here in Ohio. Now. I was just a ghost, haunting a booth in a cheap 24-hour diner on the edge of town, nursing a cup of coffee that tasted like battery acid. My fork froze halfway to my mouth as I looked up. The television mounted in the corner, coated in a layer of yellow grease, was broadcasting a breaking news segment from the city centre. I stared at the scrolling banner at the bottom of the screen. It read, "Memorial Service for Eleanor Marlowe, devoted mother. Tragically lost." My heart hammered against my ribs. It was surreal. A nightmare playing out in high definition. The camera panned over the interior of the new Grace Cathedral, a place so packed with flowers it looked like a botanical garden. And there he was, Nathan Cross, my only son. He had dropped his father's last name years ago to sound more holy, more marketable. He stood behind a polished oak pulpit in a black suit that cost more than my car used to be worth. He wiped a tear from his cheek with practiced precision, the lighting catching the moisture perfectly. My mother. She had a heart of gold. Nathan sobbed into the microphone, his voice cracking just enough to break hearts in the pews. But that heart was weak. When the Lord called her home, it was sudden. "We ask that you give generously to her legacy fund today. It is what she would have wanted." I felt a cold shiver crawl down my spine that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. Behind him, projected on a massive screen, was my face. It was a photo he had taken of me in the recovery room, mere weeks before the accident, right after my heart surgery. I looked pale, frail, and vulnerable. He had been planning the narrative even then. He was selling a lie about heart disease to cover up the violent truth of a staged car crash. According to the state of Ohio, the woman in the booth did not exist. I had officially died 3 days ago in a fiery car wreck on a dark, rural road. In reality, I was living under a stolen name, sleeping in a roach-infested motel, and paying cash because my bank accounts, my health insurance, and my identity had been wiped clean the moment that gavel banged down on my death certificate. My hand drifted to my coat pocket. My fingers curled around the cold metal of a USB drive. Inside were the digital scans of a forged death certificate and a life insurance policy worth $2 million that Nathan had secretly taken out in my name. Next to it, crumpled into a ball, was a rejection note from a lawyer I had begged for help yesterday. He had looked at my bruised face and dirty clothes and told me he did not want to touch the reputation of God's favourite son. A sharp pain throbbed in my left side, a souvenir from where the steering wheel had slammed into my ribs during the crash I was supposed to die in. How could a woman who still breathed, who still felt the ache of bruised bones and the grease on her fingers, be erased so completely by a few signatures? The system said I was ash. My body said I was furious. Nathan was building an empire on my alleged death. I watched him bow his head, accepting the sympathy of the weeping crowd. Rage, cold and hard as steel, replaced the fear in my gut. I was not just going to ruin this funeral. I was going to tear down the pedestal he stood on. I was going to destroy the myth of the benevolent Nathan Cross. I stood up, ignoring the stiffness in my legs. I left the unpaid bill on the table. The dead do not pay for coffee. From my pocket, I pulled out my wedding ring. It was scorched black on one side from the fire I had crawled out of. I slipped it onto my finger. It was a promise. I would not die again for him. I stared at Nathan's pixelated face one last time and whispered, "Today, son, the corpse will walk into the church, and this time, I am not there to be buried." The years before I became a ghost were defined by the smell of old paper and the constant, dull ache of anxiety. It was not always like this. I used to be just another widow in a crumbling row house on the south side of town. My husband, Frank, worked the steel mills until a suspended beam snapped and crushed him. The company called it an unfortunate incident and cut a check for $12,000. I called it blood money, but I spent every cent of it keeping the lights on and putting food on the table for Nathan. I eventually found steady work as the head accountant for the Harborline Hope Foundation. On the surface, it was a sanctuary of goodness. We collected donations for hurricane relief and built orphanages in countries I would never visit. My job was to make the columns balance. I learned quickly that in the world of charity, truth is often flexible. I saw expenses labeled administrative outreach that were actually $500 dinners for board members. I kept my head down. I adjusted the ledgers. I needed the health insurance. Nathan was my reason for enduring the grey monotony of it all. I remembered him as a boy, sitting at our scratched kitchen table, his small finger tracing the verses in Psalms. He would read to me while I ironed his Sunday shirts, his voice sweet and steady. "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." He would recite. I sold my rusty Ford Taurus to pay for his first semester at a theology college 3 states away. I walked to work for 4 years so he could learn to save souls. But when he came back, the boy who loved the Psalms had been replaced by a man who loved the spotlight. He started wearing suits cut from Italian silk that cost more than my monthly rent. When I asked how a junior pastor could afford such things, he flashed a smile that was too bright, too practiced, generous sponsors. "Mom," he said, patting my hand, "you worry too much. Soon, I will be the one taking care of you. You won't have to lift a finger." The first crack in the facade appeared on a Tuesday afternoon. I was reconciling the monthly bank statements at the office when I noticed a series of transfers to a vendor listed only as NC Consulting. $5,000 here, $8,000 there. The initials made my stomach tighten. When I asked Mr. Henderson, the director, he snatched the file from my hands. "Don't ask questions that don't concern you." "Ellie?" He snapped. "Just sign off on it. We have overheads to cover." A week later, I stayed late to finish the quarterly tax prep. The office was dark, but I heard a voice in the hallway. It was Nathan. He was not using his warm, pulpit voice. He sounded cold, calculating, like a man discussing the disposal of bad inventory. "Clear my mother's files," he said into his phone. I pressed myself against the wall, my heart hammering against my ribs. "She just needs to sign. I don't care about the risk. Just do it. The rest is my problem." A chill went through me that had nothing to do with the office air conditioning. I did not go home that night. Instead, I sat at my desk and scanned every invoice, every strange transaction to NC Consulting. I took screenshots of the bank transfers. I saved everything into a hidden, encrypted folder on a backup drive. I told myself I was just being paranoid. I told myself I was gathering this to protect him from his own mistakes, not to build a case against him. The tension broke when a surprise audit hit the foundation. The panic in the executive suite was absolute. Henderson cornered me, sweating through his dress shirt, and slid a stack of falsified balance sheets across my desk. He needed my signature to certify that the funds were intact. If I refused, the foundation would collapse, and Nathan, who was now the face of our national fundraising campaign, would be destroyed. I looked at the papers. I looked at the photo of Nathan on my desk. I picked up my pen and signed my name. I committed fraud because I loved my son more than I loved the law. Nathan rewarded me 2 days later. He drove me to the city centre and took me up to a penthouse apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows. "This is it, Mum," he said, handing me a sleek, brand-new smartphone. "I bought this for you. Let me set up your online banking app so I can deposit your allowance directly. You deserve the best life has to offer." I let him take my old ID, my social security card, and my banking passwords. He said he needed them to streamline my finances. I stood by the window, looking out at the city lights shimmering below like spilled diamonds. I thought I had finally ascended. I thought my suffering was over. I did not realize that as I admired the view. My son was carefully tightening the noose around my neck. The rain drummed against the roof of the sedan like 1,000 nervous fingers. It was a pitch-black night, the kind that swallows headlights and hides the world. Nathan kept his eyes on the winding road, his grip on the steering wheel white-knuckled. He told me we needed a break, a spiritual retreat at a cabin near the lake to help my recovery. I checked my phone for the 3rd time. "No service" glowed in the corner of the screen. Just a little further. "Mom," Nathan said, his voice tight. "We are almost to peace and quiet." Suddenly, the car lurched. Nathan cursed under his breath and pulled onto the gravel shoulder of the deserted road. The silence, after he killed the engine, was deafening, broken only by the hiss of rain. "Engine trouble," he muttered, unbuckling his seatbelt. "Come hold the flashlight for me. I need to check the trunk." I stepped out into the cold drizzle. The air did not smell like rain. It smelled of gasoline. Sharp, pungent, and terrifyingly strong. Why would the car smell like fuel if it was just an engine stall? I walked to the back of the car, the gravel crunching under my orthopedic shoes. Nathan was standing there, but he was not looking at the car. He was looking down the road, where 2 blinding headlights were growing larger, accompanied by the roar of a heavy engine. He turned to me. His face was a mask of tragedy, but his eyes were dry and hard. "I am sorry, Mum," he whispered, the sound barely audible over the approaching roar. It has to be this way." He stepped back. I froze. The truck was not slowing down. The lights consumed my vision, turning the world white. I felt a violent shove, not from the truck, but from my son, pushing me perfectly into the trajectory of the impact. Then came the sound of metal screaming against metal, a force like a sledgehammer hitting my chest. And then darkness. I woke up to the smell of formaldehyde and stale air. It was pitch black. I tried to inhale, but the air was thick and plastic. Panic, cold and primal, seized me. I was trapped. I kicked out, but my foot hit a soft, heavy barrier. I reached up, my hand brushing against cold, slick material. A zipper. I was in a body bag. My chest screamed in agony with every shallow breath. I must have broken ribs. But I was alive. I lay still, my heart thudding against the floor of the gurney. as a heavy metal door clattered open somewhere nearby. Voices drifted in, bouncing off tiled walls. "When is the transport for the Marlowe woman?" a rough voice asked. "Tonight?" a younger, nervous voice replied. Pastor Cross paid extra for the express package. No autopsy. Immediate cremation. He said he couldn't bear the thought of her waiting in the cold. Generous man. The first voice grunted. "Check the tag. Make sure the paperwork is signed before the furnace is hot. I want that $5,000 bonus he promised." They were going to burn me alive. Adrenaline flooded my veins, masking the pain in my chest. I clawed at the zipper above my face. My fingers were slippery with blood, but I found the metal tab. I pulled. The sound of the zipper tearing open was like a gunshot in the quiet room. I sat up, gasping for air, the plastic falling away from my face. A young man in green scrubs stood 5 feet away, a clipboard in his hand. He dropped it. The clatter echoed loudly. His face went white, his eyes bulging as if he were seeing a demon. "Jesus, Mary, and Joseph," he stammered, backing into a metal cart. I swung my legs over the side of the steel table. My hospital gown was torn, and I was shivering violently. I looked him dead in the eye. "Help. Me," I rasped, my voice sounding like gravel. The boy looked at the door, then back at me. He was terrified, but not just of a ghost. He was terrified of the clipboard on the floor. I signed it," he whispered, his hands shaking. "I signed the declaration. Cardiac arrest. If you are alive, I lose my license. I go to jail. Please." I begged, sliding off the table. My legs buckled, and I grabbed the metal edge to stay upright. He tried to kill me. Do not let him finish it." The door handle rattled. The boy's eyes widened. In a split-second decision, he grabbed my arm and shoved me behind a row of tall metal filing cabinets in the corner. He threw a spare lab coat over my shivering shoulders just as the heavy door swung open. A doctor walked in, holding a tablet up in front of his face. "He was on a video call?" "Yes, Mr. Cross," the doctor said, his voice smooth and professional. "The preparations are complete." I peered through the gap in the cabinets. On the screen of the tablet, clear as day, was Nathan. He was sitting in his home office, sipping a glass of amber liquid. He looked calm, relaxed, excellent. Nathan's voice tinny through the speakers. "Is the certificate ready? I need to fax it to the insurance company first thing in the morning. The assets are time-sensitive." "Sending the digital copy now," the doctor said. The attendant ushered me toward the back exit while the doctor was distracted. He pushed the door open, and the cold night air hit me. I stumbled out into the empty parking lot, the rain still falling. I collapsed behind a large metal dumpster, clutching my side. I watched through the rain-streaked window as the doctor laughed at something Nathan said. My son had not just left me to die on the side of the road. He had built a machine to process my death, greased with bribes and fake tears. I sat in the mud, shivering, and realized the accident was not an accident. It was an execution, and they had missed. I hitched a ride back to the city in the cab of a produce truck that smelled of rotting onions and diesel. The driver dropped me off 3 blocks from the financial district under a grey, weeping sky. I pulled the collar of the stolen lab coat up around my neck to hide my face. The city felt different now. It was no longer my home, it was a cage. I kept my head down, avoiding the gaze of traffic cameras and the black domes of security lenses on every corner. To me, they were no longer tools of safety, but eyes of the beast, feeding my location directly to Nathan. I walked into my bank branch, the same one I had used for 20 years. My hands were trembling as I approached the teller. A young woman I recognized named Sarah. "I need to make a withdrawal," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "My name is Eleanor Marlowe." Sarah typed into her keyboard, then stopped, her face drained of colour. She looked at her screen, then up at me, then back at the screen. "Ma'am?" she whispered, her voice shaking. "The system lists this account holder as deceased. The funds were transferred yesterday by the executor, Mr. Cross. We have the death certificate on file. I am standing right here." I slammed my hand on the counter, making her flinch. "Look at me, Sarah. It is me." She reached for the silent alarm button under the desk. "Please leave," she hissed. "Mr. Cross warned us that a woman might try to impersonate his late mother. He said it was a symptom of grief psychosis. Please." Before I call security, I ran. I ran until my lungs burned. I tried the family lawyer next, a man who had known Frank. He did not even let me past the reception desk. He stood in the lobby, holding a file folder like a shield. "Eleanor died in a car accident," he said flatly, looking through me as if I were made of glass. I saw the report. "Go away, or I will have you arrested for fraud." The bureaucracy was a wall of ice. I walked to Nathan's luxury apartment building, the one with the gold-plated numbers on the gate. The doorman, a burly man in a uniform that cost more than my monthly grocery bill, stepped in front of me with his arms crossed. "Mr. Cross is in mourning," he rumbled. He left strict instructions. "No visitors. Especially not the woman the police are looking for. He said you might come. He said you were confused." I backed away, shivering in the biting wind. I looked up at the skyscraper across the street. A massive digital billboard illuminated the gloom. It was an advertisement for the Cross Ministries and Relief Fund. Nathan's face was 50 feet tall, smiling down benevolently at the city he was deceiving. His eyes seemed to follow me, mocking my helplessness. Desperate for sanctuary, I went to the small brick chapel on 4th Street, where I used to volunteer at the soup kitchen. Pastor Miller opened the door, but he did not invite me in. He stood in the threshold, blocking the warmth from spilling out. "Ellie," he said, using my name but looking at me like I was a leper. "Nathan told us about your episodes. He said you survived the crash, but your mind did not. Please, do not cause a scandal here. We are praying for your soul. Go to the hospital. Let them help you." He closed the door in my face. The lock clicked with a finality that broke something inside me. I had one place left, my rented duplex on the edge of town. I arrived as the sun was setting, casting long, bruised shadows across the porch. My key would not turn. The lock was new and shiny. On the curb, I saw them 3 black trash bags. I ripped one open. My clothes, my photo albums, the quilt my grandmother made, all of it soaked in rain and street water. The landlord stuck his head out the window. "Hey, get away from that trash, Mr. Cross paid the lease termination fee. He said the new tenant moves in tomorrow. That property belongs to the Eleanor Marlowe Memorial Fund now." I was effectively erased. I had no home, no money, and no name. That night, I found a dry spot on a hard plastic bench at the central bus station. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like angry hornets. I pulled the USB drive from my pocket and squeezed it tight. It was the only thing I had left, the only proof that I was not crazy. It contained the financial records, the transfers, the evidence of the rot beneath Nathan's holy exterior. I heard the click of heels on the tile floor. A woman sat down on the bench next to me. She wore a sharp trench coat and smelled of cheap cigarettes and rain. She was about 55, with eyes that had seen everything and liked none of it. I recognized her vaguely from the news years ago, Rosa Delgado, a financial crimes inspector who had been disgraced. She stared straight ahead, not looking at me. "You look terrible for a dead woman," she said, her voice rough like sandpaper. I tensed, ready to run. "Who are you?" She turned to me then. She held up a manila folder. Clipped to the front was a grainy photo of me from the surveillance camera at the diner, labeled "Imposter, apprehend immediately." "Nathan Cross hired me this morning," she said, lighting a cigarette despite the no smoking sign. "He told me a deranged woman was impersonating his saintly mother. He paid me $5,000 just to find you and hold you for the police." She took a long drag and blew the smoke toward the ceiling. "But here is the thing about Nathan," she continued, turning to look me dead in the eye. "He pays too much. Innocent men don't pay $5,000 to catch a crazy lady. They call 911. She leaned in closer, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "If you are a fake, why did Nathan pay so much to have me chase you? I want to hear your story. Eleanor. And do not skip the parts where he cooked the books." We sat in the back booth of a dive bar called the Rusty Anchor, the kind of place where the floor stuck to your shoes and the bartender knew better than to ask questions. I laid it all out for Rosa. I told her about the phantom transfers to NC Consulting, the smell of gasoline on the rainy road, and the cold terror of waking up inside a body bag. I spoke until my throat was dry, and through it all, Rosa did not interrupt once. She just sat there, photographing the documents on my USB drive with her phone, her face unreadable. "I knew it," Rosa muttered, sliding the USB back to me. "I investigated Harborline 5 years ago. I found a hole in their books the size of a Buick." I was ready to press charges for embezzlement. "What happened?" I asked, gripping my glass of water. "Politics." She spat. "My boss got a call from a senator who plays golf with your son's board of directors. They claimed I was harassing a pillar of the community. 2 weeks later, I was fired for misconduct. Nathan Cross didn't just steal money, he stole my career." She pulled up the digital file of the life insurance policy on her tablet. Her finger traced the lines of fine print. "Look at this date," Rosa said, tapping the screen. "He bumped the coverage to $3 million exactly 6 months ago, and he changed the beneficiary from the foundation to himself as the sole trustee." I felt sick. He was planning this while I was recovering from surgery, while he was bringing me soup. He isn't grieving. "Eleanor, he is balancing the books," Rosa said, her voice hard and clinical. "Harborline is bleeding cash. I bet if we dig into their current accounts, they are in the red. Your death isn't a tragedy to him. It is a deposit. Your life insurance is the tourniquet to stop the bleeding." She leaned back, lighting another cigarette. "But this is sloppy. To pull this off, he needs a trifecta. He needs a doctor to call the time of death, a morgue director to sign off on the cremation without a body, and a county clerk to rubber stamp the certificate. That is at least 3 people he had to bribe. That is 3 loose ends." So we go to the police, I asked, hope flickering in my chest. No. Rosa shook her head. Not yet. To the police. You are dead. If you walk in there now, Nathan will claim you are an imposter, a mentally ill woman he has never seen before. He has the paperwork to prove you are ash in an urn. We need to prove you are the legal Eleanor Marlowe first, and then we prove the death certificate is a fraud. She reached into her bag and pulled out a key card. For now. Eleanor Marlowe stays dead. You are Nora Hale. I rented a room at the Motel 6 on the highway under my name. Cash only. No paper trail. Rosa began scrolling through the schedule on the Harbour Line website. She stopped, a dark smile touching her lips. Well, look at that, she said. The memorial service is scheduled for Tuesday at 10 in the morning at New Grace Cathedral, and according to the insurance rider, the first disbursement of funds is authorized for Tuesday at noon. He is timing it, I realized, a chill running through me. He acts the grieving son at 10, and by lunch, he is $3 million richer. Exactly, Rosa said. It is theatre. He needs the public spectacle to solidify the narrative before the check clears. I looked down at my hands. They were shaking. Maybe I should just disappear. If I take the bus to another state, I can start over. I don't know if I can fight him. Rosa, he is so powerful. Rosa reached across the table and grabbed my wrist. Her grip was tight, painful. Listen to me, she hissed. If you run, he wins. He keeps the money. He keeps the fame. He keeps the lie. And you die in a gutter somewhere, nameless and penniless. Is that what you want? Do you want the man who put you in a body bag to get a standing ovation for it? I thought about the cold metal of the morgue table. I thought about the smell of gasoline. I thought about Nathan's face on the billboard, smiling while I dug through trash. No, I whispered. I want him to pay. Good, Rosa said, releasing my hand. Then we don't run. We wait. We let him think everything is perfect. We let him get up on that stage, in front of the cameras and the donors. We wait until he feels untouchable. And then we crash the party, she said. She slid a cheap, disposable phone across the table to me. Take this, Rosa said. From this moment on, you are officially living again. And the thing about coming back from the dead, Eleanor, is that you have to bite back. I stared at my reflection in the stained glass of a public park restroom. Rosa had done her work well. My grey hair was now a dark chestnut, the colour it had been 10 years ago, and she had applied foundation to hide the bruising from the accident. I looked like the woman in the obituary photo, only sharper, harder. I looked like a ghost who had refused to cross over. You look like trouble? I whispered to the glass. I walked the 3 blocks to New Grace Cathedral in the rain. The street was lined with news vans. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of lilies and expensive perfume. It was standing room only. Local politicians, wealthy donors, and weeping parishioners packed the pews, their eyes glued to the stage where my son was performing his greatest act. Nathan stood behind the pulpit, bathed in a soft spotlight. He looked angelic. My mother was a warrior, Nathan said, his voice trembling with manufactured grief. She fought a silent battle with heart disease for years. She sacrificed everything for me, her only son. And when the Lord called her, it was peaceful. He paused. A single, perfect tear rolled down his cheek. The audience collectively sighed. Ushers began moving down the aisles with velvet baskets, and I watched as thick envelopes were dropped in. They were paying for a lie. I placed my hand on the heavy brass handles of the main doors. I pushed. The doors swung open with a groan that echoed through the vaulted ceiling. A gust of cold wind and rain swept into the sanctuary, extinguishing the candles in the back row. The sound of the organ faltered. Every head turned. I walked down the center aisle. My wet sneakers squeaked against the polished marble floor. I did not look at the crowd, but I heard them. Look at her. Isn't that? It looks just like the picture. Is it a ghost? I kept my eyes locked on Nathan. For a split second, the mask slipped. His eyes went wide. His mouth opened in genuine horror, and the color drained from his face. He looked like a child caught standing over a broken vase. But Nathan was a professional. He blinked, and the shock was gone, replaced instantly by a look of confusion and pity. He raised a hand, stopping the murmurs of the crowd. "Welcome," he said, his voice projecting warmth he did not feel. "We welcome all mourners here, even those we do not know." I did not stop until I was standing right below the pulpit, next to the easel holding my own smiling portrait. I reached out and touched the frame. It was cold. I turned to face the congregation, snatching the wireless microphone from its stand before the choir director could react. The feedback screeched, making everyone flinch. "My name is Eleanor Marlowe," I said, my voice booming through the speakers. "I am not dead. But my son needed me dead to take my money." The cathedral erupted. A woman in the front row screamed and clutched her pearls. An elderly man made the sign of the cross. Flashbulbs went off like lightning storms. Nathan lunged forward, grabbing the pulpit with both hands. "Brothers and sisters, please, stay calm," he shouted, his voice booming over the chaos. "This woman is an imposter. She is a troubled soul who has been stalking our ministry. She is taking advantage of our grief." He pointed a shaking finger at me. "She has a history of mental illness." Nathan lied, his voice dropping to a sympathetic register. "Paranoid delusions. She thinks she is my mother. Please, do not listen to her ravings. We need to get her help." I looked at the faces in the front row. They were looking at me with fear, not belief. Nathan was turning them against me. He was turning my survival into madness. 2 police officers, who had been standing at the back as security, began running down the aisle. One of them was Officer Miller, a man who attended Sunday services here. "Ma'am, put the microphone down," Miller ordered, reaching for my arm. "Ask him why he didn't order an autopsy," I screamed into the mic, fighting the officer's grip. "Ask him why he paid the morgue $5,000 to cremate me immediately, if I am fake. Why was he so afraid of my body?" "Cut the sound," Nathan roared at the tech booth. The speakers went dead, but I kept screaming. Nathan jumped down from the stage. He rushed at me, not to hug me, but to silence me. He grabbed for the microphone I was still clutching. "Give it to me," he hissed, his face inches from mine. We struggled for a brief, violent moment. His hands were clammy. He wrenched the microphone from my grip, but in the process, he wiped his face with a white silk handkerchief and then used the same hand to shove me back. The handkerchief, damp with his sweat and saliva, snagged on my wristwatch. I fell back into the arms of the police officer. Nathan stood over me, panting, clutching the microphone like a weapon. "Get this sick woman out of here," he commanded. "She has desecrated this holy place." As the officer dragged me backward, I looked toward the side pillar, Rosa was there, holding a large video camera like a freelance journalist. She was not filming my face. She had zoomed in tight on my wrist. I unclenched my fist. The silk handkerchief was tangled in my watch strap. I had his DNA. I stopped fighting the officer and let him lead me out into the rain. Nathan thought he had won the scene, but he had just handed us the weapon that would end him. The police released me an hour later. Rosa had pulled strings I did not know she had, citing lack of intent and a misunderstanding of medication. But the damage was done. By the time we got back to the motel, my face was plastered across every news site in the state. The headlines were brutal, homeless woman crashes, funeral of beloved pastor. Mental health crisis interrupts memorial service. And the worst one, imposter claims to be dead mother of Nathan Cross. I sat on the edge of the cheap motel bed, staring at the small TV. Nathan was on the evening talk show City Perspectives. He sat in a plush armchair, looking weary but noble. "It breaks my heart," Nathan said softly to the host, clasping his hands together. "To lose my mother is painful enough, but to have a woman, a confused, clearly suffering woman, use that grief to seek attention. It is a tragedy. If the court allows, I want to pay for her psychiatric treatment. We must respond to hate with love." I threw a plastic cup at the screen. It bounced off Nathan's sympathetic face. "He is killing me again," I whispered, my voice thick with tears. "First he killed my body. Now he is killing my name. Everyone thinks I am crazy. Rosa, no one believes me." Rosa did not look up from the small desk where she was working. She was wearing latex gloves. Laid out in front of her were 3 items: the silk handkerchief Nathan had left on my wrist, a crumpled paper water cup she had fished out of the trash backstage at the cathedral, and a vial of my own blood drawn an hour ago. "Let him talk," Rosa said, sealing the handkerchief in a plastic evidence bag. "Every time he opens his mouth, he digs the hole deeper. He thinks this is a PR battle. It isn't. It is a forensic one. We drove to a private lab in an industrial park 2 towns over. Rosa knew the technician, a guy who owed her a favor from her days on the force. We handed over the samples. The request was simple: prove maternity. If my DNA matched the DNA on that handkerchief and cup, Nathan's claim that I was a stranger would shatter. While we waited for the results, Rosa opened her laptop. She had been tracking the insurance money. "Got him," she muttered, pointing at a flowchart on the screen. The first payment of $500,000 cleared at noon. It didn't go to the foundation. It went to a shell company called EM, Legacy Holdings, LLC. Guess who the registered agent is his personal assistant? Sarah Miller. Sarah. I gasped. She brought me coffee every morning. She asked about my garden. "Everyone has a price," Rosa said grimly. "But here is the smoking gun. I found the cremation order." She pulled up a scanned document. It was dated October 14th. My accident was on the 15th. I said, my blood running cold. "Exactly." Rosa tapped the screen. "He booked the cremation 24 hours before you died." "That is premeditation. Eleanor. That is murder 1. We spent the rest of the night breaking into the county archives." Rosa picked the lock on the back door of the records building like she was opening a soda can. Inside, under the hum of the server banks, we found the physical death certificate. The doctor's signature was shaky, almost illegible. In the margin, scrawled in blue ink, was a note. "Family requests no autopsy. Expedite processing per Pastor Cross. I stared at the paper. For a moment, a foolish, desperate part of me wanted to find an excuse. Maybe he was pressured, I said, my voice trembling. Maybe someone forced him to do this. He was such a sweet boy. Rosa. He used to cry when he stepped on a bug. Rosa pulled out her phone and played the audio recording she had gotten from the morgue attendant I had spared. The voice was tinny but clear. Pastor Cross brought the cash in a gym bag, said he wanted it done fast. No ashes, no questions. The hope in my chest died. It was replaced by a cold, hard stone. He didn't just let me die, I whispered. He paid for the fuel. At 3 a.m, Rosa's phone pinged. She looked at the text message, then at me. A slow, predatory smile spread across her face. "The lab results are in," she said. "Probability of maternity is 99.99%. You are his mother, Eleanor, and we have the paper to prove it." She closed the laptop with a snap. "Good," she said. "Now he can't play the grieving son while calling you a liar. He is going to have to look you in the eye and explain why his dead mother shares his DNA." The papers were spread across the motel bed like a map of a war zone. Rosa was pacing the small room, her mind working faster than her mouth could keep up. She had spent the last 3 hours tracing the digital footprints of the Harborline Hope Foundation, and what she found was not just embezzlement. It was an empire of dirt. "You are thinking too small, Ellie," Rosa said, stopping to point at a diagram she had drawn on a legal pad. "The insurance money, that is just the tip of the iceberg." I tracked the donation cycles. Harborline takes in millions for disaster relief, filters it through 3 shell companies, and deposits it right back into accounts controlled by Nathan. It is a washing machine. He is cleaning dirty money for someone, and he is using your death to plug the leaks. She pulled another document from her stack. It was a digital copy of a power of attorney form, dated 3 years ago. "Do you remember signing this?" she asked. I squinted at the signature. It was mine, but it looked weak, trailing off at the end. I don't know." I stammered. "The date. That was the day after my bypass surgery. I was on so much medication, I could barely remember my own name." "Exactly," Rosa said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "He waited until you were high on morphine to get you to sign away your rights. He has legally owned you for years." But Rosa was not done. She hesitated, looking at me with a softness I had not seen in her before. She pulled out a yellowed file from the bottom of the stack. It was an old medical report from the county hospital. "Eleanor." When I looked into Nathan's connections, I found a doctor named Aris. He is currently on the board of Harborline. But 20 years ago, he was the attending physician at the emergency room where your husband died. My breath hitched. Frank died of internal bleeding. The beam crushed him. The report says cardiac arrest due to an overdose of hydromorphone. Rosa corrected me gently. "Dr. Aris prescribed 3 times the lethal dose for pain management. It was ruled an accidental error. But now, that same doctor is on Nathan's payroll." I felt the room spin. I sat down heavily on the bed, clutching my chest. "Are you saying—" I choked out, the words tasting like bile. "Are you saying he practiced on his father? I am saying Nathan learns from his mistakes." Rosa said grimly. "He got away with it once. He thought he could get away with it again with you. It was a test run." I wanted to scream. I wanted to curl into a ball and weep for the man I had mourned for 2 decades. Realizing his death might have been the first brick in my son's road to hell. But I forced the tears back. Fear was useless now. Only anger had value. Rosa picked up her phone. I am calling a contact at the FBI. Agent Vance. He worked the financial fraud unit with me before I got pushed out. He is honest. She put the call on speaker. I listened as she laid out the case, omitting my name, describing only a witness and the pattern of fraud. It is compelling. Rosa. A deep voice crackled over the line. But it is circumstantial. A bad doctor and a greedy pastor aren't enough for a federal warrant. I need a smoking gun. I need him to admit he knows the victim is alive, or proof he ordered the body destroyed to cover a crime. Get me that, and I will bring the cavalry. The call ended. The silence in the room was heavy. We need to make him panic, I said, my voice steady. He makes mistakes when he is scared. I opened the laptop. I created a new, anonymous email address. I attached the photo of me standing in the church aisle, the one where I looked like an avenging angel. In the subject line, I typed, "The dead do not stay buried." In the body, I wrote, "I have the recording from the morgue. I have the DNA results. I am coming for you. Son." I hit send. We did not have to wait long. Within 2 hours, the local news cut to a breaking alert. A police spokesperson was at the podium. "We have issued a warrant for the arrest of an unidentified woman wanted for fraud, identity theft, and harassment of the Cross family," the officer said. "This individual is considered dangerous and mentally unstable." "He is terrified," Rosa said, checking her police scanner. "He is using every favor he has to silence you before you can talk to the feds." She handed me a small, black burner phone. She taped a micro recorder to the back of it and synced it to her laptop. "He is going to call," Rosa said. "The email I sent him had this number in the signature. He won't be able to help himself. He needs to know what you have." 10 minutes later, the phone rang. The screen displayed an unknown number. I looked at Rosa. She nodded. I pressed the answer button and held the phone to my ear. "Hello," I said. "Mom," the voice on the other end was soft, trembling, full of the warmth I used to live for. "Oh, thank God." "Mom, is that you?" I was so scared. "The police told me you were having an episode." "He was good. He was so good it made my skin crawl. I am not crazy." "Nathan," I said coldly. "I know about the insurance. I know about Dr. Aris. I know about Dad." There was a long silence on the line. When he spoke again, the tremble was gone, but the tone remained sickeningly sweet. "Mom, you are confused," he said. "Please, let me help you. We can't talk over the phone. It isn't safe. I want to fix this. I want to take care of you. Just like I promised." "You want to kill me?" I said. "No," he sounded hurt. "I want to explain. Please, meet me. There is a quiet place. The underground parking structure at the new Harbour Line offices. It is private. Just you and me. I will bring the papers. I will show you everything. We can be a family again." I looked at Rosa. She was recording everything. Her eyes locked on mine. She gave me a thumbs up. This was the trap. He was inviting me to my execution, and I was going to accept the invitation. "Okay," I said into the phone. "Tonight. Midnight. Just us. I love you. Mom," Nathan said. I hung up. "He loves me dead," I told Rosa, standing up and grabbing my coat. "Let's go see if he can finish the job this time." The underground parking garage of the new Harbour Line headquarters was a cavern of grey concrete and buzzing fluorescent lights. It smelled of stale exhaust and damp earth. I stood in the designated spot, a single figure in a vast, empty grid. The silence was heavy, pressing against my eardrums. In my coat pocket, I clutched three things: the USB drive, the crumpled DNA results, and the black burner phone. I checked the screen one last time to ensure the call was connected, then slid it back into my pocket, leaving the microphone facing out. The elevator doors at the far end slid open with a cheerful ding that sounded obscene in the gloom. Nathan stepped out. He was not wearing his pastor's collar. He wore a charcoal suit that looked like armor, flanked by two men who were clearly not deacons. They were thick-necked, wearing earpieces and ill-fitting jackets. Nathan stopped 10 feet from me. He looked at his watch, then nodded to the men. "Give my mother and me a moment," Nathan said, his voice echoing off the concrete walls. "Wait by the ramp." The men retreated, but they did not go far. I saw them taking positions in the shadows, blocking the exits. Nathan turned to me. His face was stripped of the warmth he projected on television. It was the face of a CEO liquidating a bad asset. "You look terrible, Mom," he said flatly. "The homeless look does not suit you." I reached into my pocket and pulled out the copy of the DNA report. I held it up, my hand trembling slightly. Not from fear, but from a rage so hot it felt like it was burning my skin. "It does not matter how I look," I said, my voice steady. "This paper says I am Eleanor Marlowe. It says you are my son. You can change your name. You can change your God. But you cannot change your blood. And soon, the whole world will know that the mother you buried is standing right here." Nathan laughed. It was a dry, hollow sound. He stepped forward, snatched the paper from my hand, and ripped it in half. Then he ripped it again, letting the pieces flutter to the oil-stained floor like snow. A piece of paper, he scoffed. "Mom, you are naive. Do you know who signed your death certificate, the county coroner? Do you know who cremated you? The director of the largest funeral home in the state? I bought them all. The system says you are dead. If you scream, you are just a ghost story." I reached for my pocket again. Nathan tensed, perhaps thinking I had a weapon. I slowly pulled out the phone. "Put that away," he ordered. "I just want to turn it off." I lied. "I want you to be honest with me." I tapped the screen, but instead of powering it down, I slid the volume to the maximum setting. The line was open. Rosa and Agent Vance were listening to every breath, every word, transmitting it directly to a tactical team waiting 2 streets away. Nathan relaxed, seeing me lower the phone. He took a step closer, invading my personal space. I could smell his expensive cologne, a scent that barely masked the metallic tang of his aggression. "I should have been more thorough at the morgue," he admitted, shaking his head as if discussing a clerical error. "I trusted people to do their jobs. But that is okay. We can correct it." How I asked, "Are you going to kill me yourself this time?" "Me no." Nathan smiled, a cruel twisting of his lips. "You are a disturbed woman. You broke into this facility. You tried to steal a car. Sadly, the parking brake failed on one of the vehicles on the ramp. It rolled. It crushed you. A tragic accident. Another closed casket." He gestured behind me. I did not turn, but I heard the mechanical whir of a garage door opening, followed by the click of a gear shifting. Up on the incline, The headlights of his black sedan flared to life, blindingly bright in the dim garage. The car was empty, rigged to roll. Nathan opened his arms, stepping in to embrace me. To an observer, it would look like a son comforting his mother. To me, it was a vice closing in. He gripped my shoulders, positioning me, lining me up with the path of the car. "One last hug," he murmured. I looked into his eyes. They were the same eyes that used to look up at me while I read him bedtime stories. "Do you regret it?" I asked softly. "Any of it?" He leaned down, his lips brushing my ear. He thought no one else could hear him. "I only regret," he whispered, his voice vibrating with malice, "that I did not kill you properly the first time. I should have burned the car myself." That was it. The confession. The engine of the sedan roared. The car lurched forward, gathering speed as it rolled down the concrete ramp. Nathan tightened his grip, preparing to shove me into the lane. I did not pull away. Instead, I grabbed the lapels of his expensive suit with a strength born of a lifetime of hard labor. I twisted my body, using his own momentum against him. "Not today," I screamed. I swung him around. He stumbled, his expensive shoes slipping on the oil slick. He lost his balance just as the black sedan hurtled past us. The side mirror clipped his hip with a sickening crack, spinning him around and sending him crashing to the hard concrete. He screamed, clutching his leg, scrambling backward as the car smashed into a structural pillar with a deafening crunch of metal and glass. Suddenly, the garage was flooded with red and blue lights. The heavy steel doors at the ramp blew open. Federal agents dropped to the ground. A dozen armored figures swarmed into the garage, weapons drawn. The two bodyguards raised their hands instantly. Nathan, pale and gasping for air, tried to crawl away from me. He looked up at the approaching agents, his face shifting instantly into a mask of panic and confusion. "Help me," Nathan shouted, pointing a shaking finger at me. "She is crazy. She tried to kill me. She rigged the car." Agent Vance stepped into the circle of light. He did not look at Nathan. He walked straight to me and gently took the phone from my hand. He tapped the screen, ending the recording, and then held it up for Nathan to see. "We heard it all, Mr. Cross," Vance said, his voice cutting through the sirens. "The morgue, the bribes, and exactly what you regret." Nathan's mouth opened, but no sound came out. He looked at me, and for the first time, he saw not a victim, but the woman who had brought him into this world, and the woman who had just taken him out of it. Agent Vance wanted to put Nathan in cuffs right there on the concrete floor of the parking garage, but Rosa and I had a different idea. We did not just want to catch a criminal, we wanted to destroy a false idol. We needed the world to see the monster beneath the suit. So, we let him walk away, monitored by a dozen agents, believing he had escaped detection one last time. 3 hours later. I sat on a plastic folding chair in the wings of the Channel 9 studio. My heart was hammering against my ribs, echoing the rhythm of the countdown clock. On the other side of the soundproof glass, Nathan stood in front of a green screen that projected images of a devastated town. He looked perfect. He looked holy. "We must give until it hurts," Nathan said to the camera, his voice thick with practiced emotion. "My late mother taught me that charity is the only path to salvation. She is my greatest inspiration." I gripped the copy of the federal arrest warrant in my hand. The host, a woman named Linda, who had interviewed Nathan a dozen times, smiled warmly. "That is beautiful, Pastor." We have a question from a viewer on social media. They ask if your mother could hear you right now. What would you say to her? Nathan choked up. He looked down, composed himself, and began to read the script he had memorized. I would tell her. He never finished the sentence. Behind him, the giant monitor displaying the flood footage flickered. The image vanished, replaced by a stark, black background with a jagged green audio waveform running through the center. A caption appeared in bold white letters. Garage recording unedited. My voice, clear and sharp, blasted through the studio speakers. Do you regret it? Any of it? Then came Nathan's voice. It was not the holy voice he used for sermons. It was the cold, sneering voice of a killer. I only regret that I did not kill you properly the first time. I should have burned the car myself. The silence in the studio was absolute. It was shattered a second later by the sound of the car engine revving on the tape and my own scream. Nathan froze. He stared at the screen, his face draining of color until he looked like the corpse he had pretended I was. The host gasped, pressing her hand to her earpiece. Cut the feed, Nathan screamed, his voice cracking. Cut it. Someone has hacked the station. This is a deep fake, but the feed did not cut. The FBI had seized control of the control room. The audio played on, broadcasting his confession into living rooms across the state. This is a lie, Nathan roared, looking around wildly. I am being persecuted. The studio doors burst open. Agent Vance led a team of uniformed officers onto the set, stepping right into the frame of the live broadcast. Nathan Cross, Vance said, his voice level. You are under arrest for attempted murder, insurance fraud, and embezzlement. Nathan tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. 2 officers grabbed his arms, forcing them behind his back. The click of the handcuffs was audible over the stunned murmurs of the camera crew. I stood up. I walked out from behind the glass. I stepped onto the stage, directly into the harsh glare of the studio lights. I was not wearing a disguise. I was wearing my own face, my own grey hair, my own scars. Nathan looked up, his eyes locked onto mine. The arrogance vanished, replaced by the terrified look of a child who realizes the dark is real. Mum, he wailed, thrashing against the officers. Mum, tell them it is a mistake, help me. Mum, save me. He used the word he had not spoken with love in 20 years. I looked straight into the camera lens, ignoring his pleas. I saw the red tally light, and I knew the world was watching. My name is Eleanor Marlowe, I said, my voice steady and strong. I did not die of a heart condition. I almost died of my son's greed. But this time, the only thing being buried is the lie, not me. I turned away as they dragged him out. He was still screaming my name when the heavy doors swung shut. An hour later, I stood in the parking lot of the television station. The night air was cool and clean. Rosa handed me a thick manila envelope. The assets are frozen, she said, lighting a cigarette with a shaking hand. But the judge granted an emergency restitution order. The insurance money is locked, but we recovered a portion of what he stole from your personal accounts. It is enough. Eleanor, enough to hire a lawyer, enough to reclaim your name. I took the envelope. It felt heavy, but not as heavy as the burden I had just put down. 2 weeks later, I sat on the porch of the small suburban house I had bought back from the bank. The legal battle was far from over, but I was Eleanor Marlowe again. I had a driver's license. I had a heartbeat. I sat on the old wooden steps, listening to the wind rustle through the oak trees. I did not turn on the television. I did not need to see the news of the trial. I picked up the framed photo of Nathan from the small table beside me. It was a picture of him at 7 years old, holding a Bible and smiling. I looked at it for a long moment. Then, I turned the frame around so the face faced the wall. "You killed me twice. Son," I whispered to the empty air. "But I only needed to live this once to make it right. The rest is up to justice." I closed my eyes, and finally, for the first time in years, I breathed. Thank you so much for listening to my story. Please drop a comment below letting me know where you are tuning in from. I would love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe to Grandma's Family Diary, smash that like button, and hit the hype button to help this story reach more people.